can the options get listed? You've probably seen me talking on Twitter about how we can't wait for this. But there are a couple different rules about how options get listed and when they can come to the market. So very much this is designed to protect investors, and they want to make sure that the securities that have options listed on them, that the underlyings are fairly stable, sizable, and have the liquidity to support it. Now, that seems almost laughable when we're talking about $100 billion companies, but it's important that the options have the robust liquidity underlying them in those equities to support the options trading. Every option contract represents 100 shares of stock. So for an options contract to be traded, we need to be able to have the hedging mechanisms for the dealers to provide the liquidity. If there's not the liquidity in the stock, you're going to see really wide markets in the options. So what are those requirements, and how long do we have to wait to trade Airbnb and DoorDash? Well, number one rule of eligibility is that it must be listed on a registered exchange. So registered exchanges, NASDAQ, NYSE, the big board and the NASDAQ are the two dominant registered equity exchanges. So first of all, it must be listed on one of those exchanges. OTC stocks, for example, are not eligible to have new options listed on them. To the extent that a company goes bankrupt and it gets listed on the bulletin board, the OTCBB, then options can continue. They typically exist in a closing only state, but to initially list, it must be on a registered equity exchange. There's a whole set of rules in that equity space that we won't totally get into for the requirements to get listed, but generally it means that they are subjecting themselves to audits, that they are releasing quarterly reports. All of those sort of public equity standards must be met, and that's sort of what this requirement is talking about. The number two requirement is that stock must trade over $3 for at least 5 straight trading days. So in many ways, this is a quirk because of the way the strikes get listed, that if you only have a stock that's trading at $2, it's hard to find a lot of granularity of strike. We're not necessarily going to get 50 cents wide strikes, and so dollar strikes, don't really provide that sort of access to trading interesting options plays. So it's got to be trading at least over $3 for 5 consecutive days. One of the things we talk about, when we talk about our model portfolios here, when we talk about the products that we select, we explicitly select SPY, IWM, and QQQ as our benchmarks because of the granularity of strike listing, because there are so many places that we can get in and perfectly tailor the position and the risk reward that we're looking for in the markets. If stock's only $3 and you have a 5 delta call and then a 95 delta call, it's really hard to put on the kind of option spread that you want for that underlying. So it's got to be trading over $3. Number three is that there must be at least 7 million shares in the publicly available float. Publicly available being the key definition here. So publicly available means that it can't be held by insiders. So new companies, tightly held companies, this is often a catch for them in that, particularly in small biotech type names, in some of the smaller names that start to list, the insiders tend to dominate the holdings. And so there must be at least 7 million shares that are publicly available. Again, that gets back to the underlying liquidity. If there aren't freely traded shares on a regular basis, it's going to be hard for options dealers and market makers to provide the depth of liquidity to support vibrant options trading. So another similar qualification is that there must be 2,000 individual non-insider shareholders. So non-insider, I should say, not individual, but there must be 2,000 non-insider shareholders. Again, we want to see active trading. We want to see the underlying move consistently and have a vibrant market. And finally, the trading volume must be at least 2.5 million shares per day. Liquidity, liquidity, liquidity. We're hearing a lot of echoes of that same question.